So the government has announced a policy that is likely to pass, and I actually think this is a good policy, and I agree with the Tories on this. The ban on disposable vapes, along with action to combat the sale of some child-friendly fruit-flavoured varieties and restrictions on packaging and in-shop displays, could come into force late this year or in early 2025 via a mixture of a bill and secondary legislation. The already announced ban on selling tobacco products to anyone born on or after the 1st of January 2009 will also be introduced as a law, potentially in the same bill as that connected to vaping. Now, there are some people within the Conservative Party who oppose this on the grounds of this being a nanny state. Liz Truss has come out against it, and I'm going to talk about them and their opposition to it in a bit, but let's focus on the policy. So as I said, I agree, I support the ban. I actually saw a statistic which to me I find really worrying, was that 9% of 11 to 15-year-olds vape. I mean, the idea that 11-year-olds are vaping, it's insane. And 9% is a significant figure. Now, I'm not usually in favour of banning things. Sometimes it's clearly a government overreach. Sometimes it has the opposite effect, so when the government straight up bans substances. If we think about the alcohol prohibition, for example, I mean, that didn't work at all. That was introduced in the last century. And we've been using alcohol for thousands of years? So to suddenly ban it after all that time was never really going to work. You're never going to really ban something like alcohol when it's really ingrained in our culture. Bars and clubs and cocktails and beer, all these things have an incredibly long history. To try and prise open the relationship between humans and alcohol, I think was just straight up dumb. That's where you had the rise of speakeasy bars. And for those that don't know what it is, they were secret bars. You had to sort of be in the crowd to know. And there'll be like secret knocks and stuff. And I'm sure everyone does know what they are. I mean, they still exist today, but obviously for novelty reasons. And to be fair, that's the one good thing that came out of the alcohol ban, was the speakeasy, because I think they're pretty cool. But one thing that certainly wasn't good were people making their own, usually bath salts and other really harmful stuff. I mean, people died. So the policy was actually killing people. I think it's better to have a substance that can be taxed and regulated. And I think the same for drugs. I think all drugs apart from cocaine and heroin should be legalized. The reason why I leave out those two is that drugs such as weeds, MDMA, ecstasy, and a few others aren't really that harmful in of itself. The harm actually comes from what drugs are laced with. Because they're illegal, dealers will carve the drugs and stuff it with other crap in order to make more money on it. If these drugs were taxed and regulated, they'd actually be safer because they'd be the more pure drug. Now, cocaine and heroin, they're just straight up dangerous. So decriminalization, yes. Making them legal, absolutely not. But this is different when it comes to vaping. First, this policy doesn't ban nicotine, which is the addictive substance in it. Nicotine is still available elsewhere, namely smoking, which I'll touch upon in a second. The big problem with vaping is that it was initially marketed as a healthy alternative to smoking. The original idea was to try and get people to stop smoking. That did work for a lot of smokers, but the problem was that it had just been replaced by vaping. So rather than vape being a temporary tool to stop altogether, they just continued with that. Another even bigger problem was that vaping started to appeal to people who had never smoked. So the plan to try and stop people smoking completely backfired. We have now introduced a new addictive habit to new people. The vaping industry is very lucrative. Companies knew this. So you would have seen the marketing had changed to what we see then, to what we see today, which is now we have like multicolored, multi-flavored variety. It's mad. It's mad. And vapes were being sold in some shops at like the end of the aisle. It's incredible how accessible it was. And honestly, this is just like a personal thought. I don't really have facts or data to back this up. But I don't think vaping is like alcohol in any way. I think like people will eventually get over it. Like I don't see a mass space on the black market for it. But facts don't care about my feelings. But the worst case scenario is that vapors may take up smoking to get their nicotine fix. But I don't think that's really significant because vaping is very different. It smells and tastes different. I find it really hard to believe that someone who chooses like the most fruity flavor of vape is suddenly going to take up the honestly rank and disgusting taste of cigarettes. But you do see it everywhere. I mean, literally everyone is vaping. I see it far more than smokers. And I know for a fact that it has appealed to people who have never smoked. I've got a personal anecdote here. I'm someone who was never addicted to smoking or other substances. I mean, I did casually smoke now and then with a drink, but I've not had a cigarette for years. However, I found myself really addicted to vaping. I was on holiday and I bought a vape because why not? you're on your holidays, and vaping is supposed to be far less harmful. So I thought, so be it. But when I got back, I carried on. So I work from home. My actual pay job is a graphic designer. My office is my sofa a lot of the time. But I found myself constantly puffing the vape. I'd be working on my laptop with the vape in one hand the whole time. And I would take a puff every 5 or 10 minutes, 12 hours a day. It was non-stop. I'd wake up, I'd puff straight away. And I use the disposable. So I get to the point that I'd use it all in one day. So in the morning, I buy a disposable vape, smoke it, and it'll run out by the end of the day. Again, never been addicted to anything else. And I started getting tightness in my chest. Kind of freaked me out. I did think maybe I was having a heart attack. I don't think it was, but that was enough of a wake-up call at least. And I haven't touched it for 6 months, and I'm proud of myself. So yeah, I know how dangerous they are. I know how accessible they are. I mean, the flavors and the smell, they're really nice, but it's just a very harmful product. Now, I want to talk about smoking because this may be part of the bill, and it's another thing I agree with the Tories on, which is that all cigarette sales will be banned from those born after the 1st of January 2009. I think this is a smart policy. Straight up banning cigarettes for all would have dire consequences. It would be similar to the alcohol ban. So many people are dependent on it, and I would dread to think what people would come up with as an alternative. But this policy, I think, is really good because it gradually fades out. People are smoking and drinking less and less, especially the younger generation. So this policy sort of leans into that trend. It just gives it a bit more of a nudge. I don't think it's particularly disruptive. So in the future, you're 25, 30, but you were born in 2009 or after, and you'll refuse cigarettes. I don't think that's a big deal. I don't think that's going to be a big deal for the majority because I don't think the majority are going to be smokers. If you, I mean the overwhelming majority. If they couldn't buy them at 18, it's far less likely they're going to suddenly pick up their habit afterwards. I mean, they'd have to get parents or older friends to get it for them, which they shouldn't do. But you probably will have like 99% of people of that age who won't smoke anyway. Now, I said I'd talk about the small amount of conservative opposition. So I'm somewhat a little surprised that the government is doing this. There's kind of two sides of conservatism, which makes sense to ban vapes, but it's also contradictory. So for more social conservatives, banning vapes makes sense. You don't want a population addicted to anything, really. It's not proper. They're against decriminalization or legalization of drugs, which doesn't work. So I can see how that works together. But on the other side, you've got conservatives who just love profit making for big companies, and banning vaping is a very anti-business thing to do. And there's also odds with the opposition to the Nanny State. Someone like Truss absolutely hates the state, hates public services. It's not surprising that she would use that term. Although I do find a lot of conservatives very hypocritical. They love the free market and they hate government interference when it comes to profit making, but are absolutely social authoritarians. They're against equal marriage, or they were historically, and to be fair, some conservatives today still are. They don't support LGBTQ people or their rights. So with Truss, she could have gone either way on this, and she has recently heavily lent into culture wars. She is an authoritarian, so I don't think it would have been completely out of whack had she supported the ban. However, because this doesn't concern human happiness, but rather it will hurt the profits for companies, I can see why she landed on the side of opposing the ban. Now, for me, this isn't a nanny state kind of thing. I've spoken to other leftists who don't support the ban because they think it's government interference, but I don't see it that way. Is it really pro-freedom to allow companies to exploit addiction? As we know, the vaping industry has changed its image from the healthy alternative to, oh, look at all these nice flavors, and look at it, how nice they smell. So if you don't like traditional smoking, don't worry, here's an alternative where you can inhale nicotine still. Addiction is good for companies. So I think the government stepping in is actually curbing the authoritarian nature by big business who are exploiting people. It's like when libertarians think that only the government can be authoritarian. So they want to shrink the state as much as possible. But all that does is give more power to corporations to control people. I think the government, when done right, is a protective barrier on behalf of the people. And I think this policy does that. What do you think? Is this a good idea? Is this the government getting too involved? Or is this a necessary step to make sure that people are not being exploited by addiction? Please let me know what you think in the comments. I'm really interested in your perspective on this. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and drop a comment. It's good for the algorithm, and I'm interested in what you have to say. If you're not already subscribed, please do, and hit the notification bell. You can also support this channel by becoming a member for 99p per month. And if you're feeling a little more generous, then you can support us on Patreon for £3 or £5 per month. This channel for a while has been uploading every single day, and it's quite a lot of work that is still voluntary and scheduled around my paid work. Currently, Turn Left makes around £20 a month, but I have so much ambition, expect in the future to see more variety in content, such as interviews and Vox Pops. But I want this to be a fully fledged media organisation where not only is this my full-time job, but to have multiple people working for Turn Left. I like to see a live show in the future, more content that delves into culture, history, and much more, but that can only be done if there's money. So please, if you can, support us in any way that's in your capacity. And thank you to existing members, subscribers, and patrons. See you next time.